Oh, I'm sure this year will be good. By the end of the year, I think Bitcoin will reach its all-time high of 70,000. It was the same as a cheeky short position when I put my money down. I believed that the Federal Reserve would not renew the bank term funding program. There could be stress in the banks. Bitcoin did drop a little in March 2023 when the bank began to fail. It might be a little bit the same this time. I believed it would go over 40,000. Yes, it did. It only dropped to about 38, didn't really keep going. I also looked at the market, which was kind of not what I wanted to do. And theta's killing me as an option. I'm going to end these now. Also, Bitcoin is going to rise again. That is, I'm really long. It doesn't really matter anyway. In the end, I'm just trying to make a little extra money to buy my boys more beers. Besides that, though, you know, whatever, famous investor. Arthur Hayes says that by the end of 2024, Bitcoin will be worth more than it was at its all-time high. Hayes recently talked about his bullish view on the Bitcoin market and the future of cryptocurrencies. He said that the collapse of the banking system and the constant devaluation of the dollar could cause market movements. He thinks that more money will be printed in 2024 and 2025, which will make Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies even more valuable. Hayes stresses how important it is to watch the whole video until the end. At that point, he talks about why he believes 99% of investors are confused about Bitcoin right now and how it might reach new highs faster than expected. The US banking system is broken, as we've seen. Also, if you use real accounting instead of the shady stuff that banks do, all of them are bankrupt. All of them are broke. Things should stay the same, though, because that's what the Fed and the Treasury are paid to do. So they make up rules to make it look like these institutions are still solvent, even though they're not. They don't want to print all this money to save them, though. It seems like they want to build a backstop that will never be needed. Keep a big stick with you, but don't use it. That's how the game works. And if you're a con artist like Jay Powell, you need people to believe that the central bank has their back, but you don't want to have to do anything because you have to print all the money. This program basically gave banks a great way to refinance their assets at a great rate and get a great price for the collateral. That is leaving. But that's not the real issue now, right? Things change in the market. It's not always the same plan. The game plan changes. In March 23rd, Treasury and mortgage-backed securities were worth less than they were worth. They fixed that with a program for short-term loans from banks. This time it's business property. So even if the program for short-term loans to banks was made longer, the Fed will not accept commercial real estate loans as collateral. Instead, they want you to buy Treasury bonds, which are debts owed by the US government. They don't want you to buy office buildings and lend money to the US government. But that's what these banks have, including New York Community Bank, which is down, I don't know, 60% in the last week and a half. They offer loans for business property. They can't just hand over the bonds for these buildings to the Fed or the discount window and say, these are the bonds that I backed, the price has gone down. They're not for sale, but I need to make up for these lost deposits. Could I please have some new money? Jay, right now the answer is no, you can't have any dollars. That's why the bank is being smashed. Not at all. They need political cover. They need something to fail first. I believe that the government should not help banks. If the election were held today, Joe Biden would not beat Donald Trump. He has a problem with inflation. He thinks that the best way to help the bankers is to print money. People won't believe that they are willing to save banks unless there is a huge financial crisis. This is what we need. It's possible that the SAPE won't even go down, but the Treasury market needs to go crazy. It's almost time for us to get a big bank that's not too big to fail. They are having trouble with commercial real estate. At that point, on a Sunday night, you get the news. There's a brand new show. Some crazy talk says that it has new letters in the alphabet. Then it's just, oh yeah, we're printing money. I believe the riskiest parts of your SP are the NASDAQ, Bitcoin, AI, tech stocks, and even some bonds, right? Let's call them the Magnificent Seven. Everyone knows that the Federal Reserve prints money when the banking system has a big problem. You saw that two-year yield started falling as New York Community Bank started to fail, right? The prices of bonds went up. That doesn't make sense. The bond market is telling us that the banking system is broken. When there's a problem with the banks, they print money, which we all know. To do that, they will need to either stop quantitative tightening QT or maybe even start quantitative easing again. QE is just printing money to buy bonds. As a result, I should own bonds. That's what the bond market tells us every time it gets scared that a company might fail. I believe this has been done so many times that risky assets might not even go down. This is because the market knows that the Fed has to print money for the banks to stay solvent. So SP at 5,000, SP at 5,500, and SP at 6,000, right? It doesn't matter because I know if the banking system fails, I'll get more printed money. That's why I believe the market will continue to rise. As a result, some stocks like banks may fall sharply. There may also be real economy shit that falls sharply because commercial banks no longer lend money to real businesses. But anything that's just a stand-in for losing value of fiat money will go through the roof. Powell is fighting to stay important right now. Jones is not as strong as Janet Yellen. When he cuts, when he does anything, she tells him, in the end, if the government needs to borrow more cash, Janet Yellen and the US Treasury will buy more bonds to pay for it. So the US government can pay its bills, Powell will do whatever it takes to make sure the financial markets work well, even if that puts stress on them. That means Powell can't keep raising rates if the government debt keeps going up, or he'll put his boss out of business. Also, you can't do that. And the more debt there is, the less independent the Fed is, because the Treasury's actions will take precedence over anything the Fed wants to do. There was a time in history when the Fed lost its independence when it was merged with the Treasury. This happened because the government said it needed a central bank to help pay for the war. No more inflation, don't worry about your money, it doesn't bother us. To build tanks and act like the Germans, we need to print a lot of money by writing bonds. That's how they think. Now it's the same, $34 quadrillion or whatever the debt number is. Biden then says, I'm going to get reelected. I am going to print this bunch of money. I am going to do these checks on the stimulus. It will be paid for by Janet Yellen. Also, fuck you, Powell and the government. Wait your turn. It's the right thing to do to talk a big game about inflation. In the end, though, if the Treasury market starts to shake and fall apart, print more money. So I think he's trying to get away with something. What will people remember about this time in history? Was Powell dragged kicking and screaming into cutting interest rates, or was he just a terrible Fed president? He's trying to protect his reputation by acting like he can stop all of this by saying, oh yeah, that's unstoppable. That's not in your power at all. You don't have $10 trillion to go bomb some jerks. After that, guess what? You are going to pay for it. So I think he's just trying to keep his name alive. He doesn't have any power. Janet Yellen is in charge of everything. Declare a broad bank bailout program to solve the problem. Say, we're going to guarantee all the assets in the American banking system. Don't worry about your deposits or anything else in the bank. They know that inflation is important, though. If gas prices are high on election day and I can't get my new F-150 pickup truck because the shit never arrived, because the hooligans bombed it, I don't win. They know this stuff is important. Because of this, they're still printing a lot of money, but they'd be going even more crazy if all this other stuff wasn't going on. That's why inflation is important. I think they really don't have a choice in the end. They're fucked up here. It doesn't make sense that these foreign policy goals will help them fight inflation if they want to pursue them, since they're just putting the pressure on inflation later. Even worse, all of this inflation will happen right before the election, which is probably the worst time for them. This is because they will keep fighting these wars everywhere. Okay, you feel like the government is there to take care of everything in the US. And around the world, right, when there's a slowdown in the economy, we should prime the fiscal pump, as Keynes says. The government also does things and prints money to pay for them. So this isn't something that only happens in the US. All over the world, no matter what kind of ISM your country says it follows, they print money.